Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk about a subject today which normally on my YouTube channel I don't get any responses to, or very few responses, because it's one of those issues which I'm concerned about because it's an area in which I've worked for many, many years. And secondly, no one seems to give a shit about what happens to kids, and particularly, I think, Indigenous kids. But I'm going to talk a little bit broader on the subject than just that. And this is really about the removal of children at birth. So, this is a moment where the department will enter into a hospital with an order to remove a child literally, and I do mean literally, as the child has been born. So the parent, in some cases, and I'll say, I need to say I know about this because this has happened to many of the clients that I've worked with over the years. This literally happens. From the moment a child is born, the department will be there and they will remove the child without the mother, even in some cases, having a chance to hug or connect with that child in the first place. Now, I'm going to raise this. I'm raising this as an issue because an ABC report has come out in relation to that in South Australia, and I'm going to talk about that report in just a moment. But I want us to reflect for a moment on what it would be like if, with your children, if you had not had the opportunity to connect with them at all and the children were taken from you without any previous notification, without any previous involvement with the department, but someone within the department decided that you're a shitty parent and that they needed to remove the child. They hadn't spoken to you nor your partner about this. They just turned up and removed the child. Now, I've got 5 grandchildren and who've got great parents, aren't any issues there, thank God. But I often wonder what it would be like for them if someone had made a report about them for whatever reason and the department had chosen to remove a child and they turned up and removed any of my grandchildren. I often wonder, how would I feel, let alone them, how would I feel if that had happened to them? And I can tell you now, I would be angry, beside myself, confused, resentful, fearful. A whole host of emotions would be around me, let alone what it'd be like for the parent. Now, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are in relation to a removal. So put those aside. And I know that there can be issues such as domestic violence, mental health issues, drug issues as well. So I understand all of that. Put them aside. Put those issues aside for a moment. Just think of this person as an individual who has had their child removed without any notification of that event likely to happen. What would that moment be like for you if that happened to you or any of your kids or your grandchildren being removed? How would you respond? So I know that in many of these cases, the parents become obviously extremely upset. And often the department will see that as them being angry parents, as not being able to control their emotions. And they will attach some sort of psychological definition as to what's happened to the parent, which is negative, which is untrue. And in fact, the way that a parent often responds to these circumstances is quite normal, but they don't see it that way because, unfortunately, a lot of these social workers don't have any empathy whatsoever. All they want to do is focus on removing a child because they believe this is a shitty parent and they want that child to be safe. There are other ways to ensure that a child is safe. A child is always safe in a hospital. That a child has not been or never has been abused or killed while that child is in hospital soon after a birth. It just does not happen. Yet, the department on many occasions will make a choice about ensuring that that child is removed immediately without any contact whatsoever, in some cases, with the parent. It's a horrible, horrible circumstance. And I've been there when it's happened. I've been on the phone with parents as the department are there removing a child. I've heard the distress. It's an appalling experience to be present when a parent is so distraught about the department removing a child, and particularly when the department has given no opportunity whatsoever for the issues that are of concern to the department to be rectified. It's appalling, but it happens, and it happens very, very often. And it's an issue which needs to be dealt with and needs to be talked with, and social workers need to get their act together, and the department needs to get their act together to ensure that these families are safe and that the children can remain with them. So there's this article in the paper, which I'll bring up at the moment. It's First Nations trauma of baby removals heard in inquiry. So this is about an inquiry that's taken place in relation to this into South Australia, and I'll just highlight some of the most salient points. Ms. Nam, who's a welfare worker around Aboriginal kids and is Indigenous herself, said most of the women she supported were unknowingly the subjects of so-called unborn child concerns, that is, notifications filed by the department. They were accused of being unfit to parent, living in inappropriate housing, or not showing up to antenatal appointments. According to Ms. Nam, SA's Department of Child Protection never notified support workers or expectant mothers of its intentions to remove newborns in the first place. There was a horror story a couple of years ago where social workers and DCP workers actually entered the delivery room to notify the mother straight after giving birth that her baby was going to be removed. And I need to say that I know of a case some years ago that I worked with, and this woman, incidentally, has turned out to be a great mother. Specific issues that they had at the time were around her partner, who later spent some time in jail, I hasten to add. But she herself was fabulous. Very intelligent, smart woman, wasn't Indigenous, incidentally. But nevertheless, the department removed the child while her legs were still up in stirrups and she was being stitched up, and didn't have an opportunity to even cuddle the child. And I can assure you, she would and has proven to be with another child that she's had, a stepchild, has proven to be a great mum. And so the department has deprived this child of having the mother that she deserves to have, simply because of some allegations made against the father. Now, this is not uncommon. This happens a lot, regretfully. Now, SA Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People, April Laurie, says she has spoken to several mothers as part of an ongoing inquiry into the removal of First Nations children in South Australia whose babies were removed at birth. She said mothers and their families were unaware of the actions of the department in planning a removal throughout the duration of the pregnancy. This is a common tale, but true, and were denied opportunities to be involved in planning for the baby's care. Ms. Laurie described the way in which authorities serve child removal notifications to new mothers is appalling and disgraceful, and I couldn't agree with you more. This is insidious behaviour to ensure that mum is the last to know, to ensure there is no disruption of any plan by the statutory agency to conduct the actual act of removal. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, in a moment, about family conferencing. So I'll just talk about that in a second. But in the meantime, SA Department of Child Protection Deputy Chief Executive Adam Riley said the evidence was alarming, but in some ways not surprising. Well, you fucking should have been surprised, mate. You should have known this was happening over time. And the question is, why didn't you know? I knew, lots of other people know. Why didn't you know? All I can say is that I'll always defend the work of our staff. Well, why? Why fucking do you... Why? If they're doing the wrong thing, then you should not be defending them. But I'll never defend the indefensible. Fair enough. But what is the indefensible? The indefensible is removing children when they didn't need to be removed and removing them at birth so that the parent doesn't have any contact with the child whatsoever. This is as bad as forced adoptions, which happened back in the 50s, 60s and 70s. what you've described, I can't find a rational response to support that action. It's disempowering, it's traumatising, and it's not necessarily in compliance with the legislation. No, it isn't. So why the fuck are they doing it in the first place? I find this stuff very, very distressing. There was a discussion around here, I don't think I highlighted it, around family conferencing. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So one of the issues is about family conferences, which I've been a party to many, and which are an absolute waste of time. It's a furphy. They shouldn't have them. They should restructure them. I can remember being at a family conference some years ago, and the guy that held the conference was having a go at me. I was the only professional person in that meeting, and I had things to say about the client, who was Indigenous, incidentally, and should have had her children returned to her. No dispute about any of that. And he took exception to me simply because I was making a stand and supporting the mother of these children. And I find that it is inconceivable that someone, I'm not saying my background is the best or that I had always done the right thing, probably not, that I probably said and did things that were probably a little bit aggressive from time to time, particularly earlier in the piece. I learned that lesson later. But as the only professional in the room that has some understanding around child protection, and particularly working with the parent, then you need to have a voice. And in these family conferences, they often prevent the very professional that should be there to have a voice. And also, the family conference is supposed to be about finding a way to ensure that the child is safe, but primarily about who's going to look after the child. In most of these cases, the child is already in care. The writing's on the wall. The kids are staying in care. They're not going back to the parent. So why in the hell have a family conference in the first place? Because often what the family wants is not heard. Whatever the family wants and whatever they think is appropriate, that decision's been made. Those kids aren't going back. Who they live with, however they care to be cared for after removal is a matter for the department. And this family conference is just an effort to make it look like they're doing the right thing. And it's crap, because it simply does not work. Hasn't worked, will never work under the current structure. And the department just needs to have a conversation with me, perhaps, and I can sort through some of this crap with you, which is most unlikely, but at least I can put it out there. So what do you think about child removals? Is this an issue for you? Is it an issue that you're concerned about? There are very few people. Look, I'll do something on Sam Kerr and suddenly I get thousands and thousands of views. But do something on child protection, no one gives a shit, apparently. But I'm going to do it anyway. And if you want to have a conversation with me about it, please subscribe to my channel and please make a comment below and let me know what you think. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves. Make sure that you and your children are safe.